guys, welcome back. So today I've got a tag video for you, and this is sort of a different tag video than usual. It's one that's a little bit more discussion based, and I thought it was really cool. So this is the Fave Villains tag, and I was tagged by Unapologetic Book Nerd. She is fantastic, by the way, and her channel is not like huge, so definitely go check her out. I will leave a link to her channel in the video description down below. But I thought this tag was pretty cool because the idea is to talk about some of your favorite villains from books and talk about why they were your favorites and see if you see any connections between them. So this was super interesting because I went through and picked out some books that have some of my favorite villains in them, and I definitely do see a common thread. So let's go ahead and get into this. I am pretty excited to do this. The first villain that came to mind when I thought about my favorite villains was definitely Queen Levana from the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. And I have Winter here. I don't own Fairest, although I want a copy because it's probably my favorite book in the series. The novella that is the backstory of Levana, who is the villain in the series. She is this kind of evil, self-obsessed queen. But the reason I love her so much, and the reason I loved that book so much, is that it gets you into who she could have been, and you see who she was growing up, and you see the pain that sort of formed her into the villain that she is. And you know, it's kind of heartbreaking, honestly. You see how she just like shuts people out because she's been hurt, and you know, has issues with trust and love, even though all she like really wants desperately is to be loved. And so it's sad and it's poignant, and I don't know, there's just something about it that I found to be so compelling. And you'll see this throughout this. I find that my favorite villains are people who aren't just like born bad. They're people who have been deeply hurt and are deeply broken, and out of that brokenness they cause pain to other people. And you know, sometimes they're redeemed, sometimes they're not, sometimes they just spiral down more and more into that darkness. But I think for me what's compelling about a villain is their humanity, and is the fact that they have these could have beens that are kind of sad because you see who they could have been given a different set of circumstances or given some different choices. And so that's kind of the thing that I've seen consistently throughout it. The next book is one that maybe is not as well known, but this is actually one of my favorite authors. She's an autobi author for me that I have been a fan of for years, ever since I discovered her books. And this is the first book of hers that I ever read. It is The Distant Hours by Kate Morton. She is fantastic. She's an adult author who writes sweeping, generation-spanning historical fiction that is also kind of mystery and suspense. And The Distant Hours is probably her creepiest book. It's definitely got a gothic feel to it. And I won't go into who the villain in this is because that would be spoiling, and I highly recommend you go out and read this book because it's so good. But again, in this story, the villain is somebody who is very sympathetic. It's somebody who you feel sorry for and you feel bad for when you eventually find out who it is. And it's not, you know, it's something unexpected. You know, and it's just like tragic, really tragic, but you see how like tragedy for people can turn them into this sort of monster. And so I found that to be very compelling. So this is another one of my favorite villains, although I'm not going to tell you who it is because you should go out and read the book and find out for yourself. Next up is a book that I read last month. It was one of my favorite books of the month. If you saw my wrap-up, that was Three Dark Crowns by Kendare. And this book is really interesting. I don't know how much you would call them villains yet, but it's about these triplet sisters, and I don't think all of them are villains, but I kind of think Catherine is on her way to becoming a villain. And same deal, you guys. It's like tragic, it's nurture, she's been through a lot of pain, she's been hurt, she's been nurtured into this really awful, evil person, and you feel sorry for her because of the things that she's gone through and continues to go through. And the thing about her too is that in the story there's even moments where you see slivers of hope for her to come out of that and have redemption and have a better life, and like and then it just gets kind of dashed to pieces. and you know, without giving away how exactly, but yeah, so another one where Catherine, I think, is probably going to end up being a villain, and a good one of my favorites. And the last villain that I want to talk to you guys about is Adelina from the Young Elite series by Marie Lu. I love this series, and again, I think it's because I am totally a sucker for these villain backstories with sympathetic characters, and you see them descend into darkness and out of pain. And that is totally what this series is. So Adelina is a young girl who has been ostracized, who has been hurt throughout her life, and in the series you see her spiraling into darkness, and that is kind of what this follows. I love it. I know not everybody loves this series, but I thought it was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I also kind of love the fact that Marie has said that the story was somewhat inspired by this idea of creating something that's like kind of modeled on the Darth Vader story, but with a female protagonist. And obviously it's like in a fantasy setting, it's like not the same as Star Wars, but I kind of love that. I think it's fantastic. I think Darth Vader is actually obviously not a book villain, but one of my favorite villains as well. So yeah, Adelina from the Young Elites is another favorite. So clearly, as you can see, I have a theme that runs through all of my favorite villains. They are all interesting, complex, sympathetic characters who have been deeply damaged and hurt by people or events in their lives, and you see them spiral into darkness. Sometimes they can be redeemed and come out of it, and sometimes they can't, and it's tragic, but those are my favorite villains by far. Anyway, I thought this tag was really cool and really fun to film, so thank you so much for tagging me in this. I really appreciate it. I will tag some people in the comments down below, or if you're just interested in this and want to do it, do it. It's pretty interesting, and it's kind of fun to like think about what villains do you like and what are your favorite ones and why that may be true. It probably has some like psychological ramifications. I don't know exactly what, but it's pretty interesting. Anyway, if you guys like this video, or if you like any of my villains, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to see more videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.